Constructing viable arguments and critiquing others. How can I support students in constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasonableness of others? Common Core Math Practice number 3. In this lesson, you will learn how to teach students to construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others by modeling and supporting student discourse. Let's review. In order for students to have the discourse necessary for math practice number 3, a safe environment for all learners, where all thinking is valued, needs to be the classroom norm. Clear expectations and obligations need to be agreed upon by each member of the class. In my classroom, they are posted and referred to often in order to hold students accountable. Students must feel safe sharing their thinking, whether they have the correct answer or not. Also, students must be taught the skill of respectfully questioning someone else's thinking. Students justifying their thinking should be a high expectation in all classrooms. They need to know that a clear explanation of thinking is as important as calculating the correct answer. In order for a student to share their thinking, the mathematical task needs to have depth and not be too simple or routine. As teachers, we need to provide quality mathematical tasks for our students that provide the opportunity to deepen their thinking and reasoning. Students need to be allowed to demonstrate thinking, not just speak it. Students can construct mathematical arguments using objects, drawings, diagrams, and actions. This is how they construct viable arguments. There are many misconceptions about the 8 mathematical practices of the Common Core State Standards. This has caused educators to be unsure in how to implement them in their daily math lessons. In particular, some misconceptions about math practice number 3 are: children are not capable of expressing their own reasoning and critiquing the reasoning of others' thinking. These misconceptions are especially thought to be true when we think of young children. In the past, it was sufficient to solve a problem by using an algorithm to get the correct answer. There wasn't an expectation of the student expressing thinking or reasoning, just the calculation of the correct answer. Therefore, a student expressing their reasoning about someone else's thinking is a new skill for many students. This skill will need to be explicitly taught within the classroom. Another misconception is that older students should no longer use models or pictures. We expect young children to use pictures, but once they are in 2nd or 3rd grade, many teachers expect that the students will no longer use these models to show their thinking. As teachers, we need students to know that using tools and models are ways to deepen their understanding. Mathematical practice number 3 states, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. It is the 3rd of the 8 mathematical practices of the Common Core State Standards. The mathematical practices can seem overwhelming to teach for teachers and students alike. However, they are the foundation for not only mathematical thinking and reasoning in our classrooms, but also the deeper thinking across the curriculum. There needs to be a shared context for students to be able to construct a viable argument, let alone understand another's argument. This is especially true in the early grades. Given a quality task, students can show and tell their thinking using a demonstration. Many students have a difficult time listening to a teacher who only talks without illustrating. So if students describe their thinking from their desks without showing what they did, the other students in class will have a difficult time following their thinking. Students need to be given the opportunity to show what they know, not just tell it. This standard says students should use concrete reference such as objects, drawings, diagrams, and actions to construct arguments. The key is not the correctness, but the ability to put their words in context, to show as well as tell. This year, the members of my Math Learning Lab decided to study this question. How do students explain and record their thinking and reasoning and respond to the reasonableness of others? Our team was made up of classroom teachers from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, in addition to 3 building math leaders. We felt that our students struggled with sharing their thinking and questioning the thinking of others. We agreed that students learn more if they can clearly communicate their thinking to their classmates, but we did not see a lot of evidence of this happening within our classrooms. At one of our training days for our learning lab, we considered, What does mathematical practice number 3 look like for students at each grade level? This document was collaboratively created by our Learning Lab members. It is a guide of expectations and teacher implications for each grade level from kindergarten to 5th grade. Mathematical practice number 3 will look a little bit different depending on the grade level. What are students doing? Students will communicate their thinking verbally and in writing using a common math language. They will construct viable arguments using words, equations, objects, pictures, and drawings. Students need to be allowed to demonstrate thinking, not just speak it. Through this modeling, they will explain their thinking and make connections between models and equations. They will listen to others' thinking. Then they will evaluate their own thinking and the thinking of others. Students will participate in mathematical discussions by asking questions like, how did you get that? Why is that true? And does that always work? In this problem, taken from the Investigations Math Handbook for 3rd grade, 2 students explain their thinking in different ways. The student on the left uses a number line to add one number in parts, while the student on the right chooses to change the numbers. These are both efficient strategies, but they require different thinking. As partners, it would be interesting to listen to the reasoning and questioning these 2 students would have with each other. These are some examples of tools we may see students use to justify their thinking. Cubes, coins, hundreds charts, number line, or unmarked number line. They can use other tools as well. What does the teacher do? The teacher will take on a facilitator role while students are given time to explore their strategies. They will identify students' assumptions and help students differentiate between assumptions and logical conjectures. They set the expectations that students will formally justify and validate their conjectures. The teacher will allow discussion by students to defend their strategies. Teachers need to model effective questioning and appropriate ways to discuss math within the classroom. They will model how to evaluate student arguments. The teachers will allow students to work collaboratively to solve problems. They will model math talk to engage students in explaining their thinking and prompt students to evaluate and understand peer arguments. The teacher will expect students to listen with engagement to their peers and engage in mathematical conversations in the classroom. Students at all grades can listen or read the arguments to others, decide whether they make sense, and ask useful questions to clarify or improve the arguments. Teachers will strategically partner students, depending on the purpose of the task, to help students be supported or challenged in the task at hand. Sometimes you may want students to be partnered with students who are at the same ability level, high versus low ability level, assertive versus shy students, or even boy or girl groupings. I use this clock template as my partner organizer. I have thought about each situation I may need for partners and filled in the clock to partner the students. They also had some choice partners. When I send the students off to work, I tell them which partner to find, such as their 1 o'clock partner. They check their clock and they are off to work. This allows me to differentiate without a lot of planning, while the students have a variety of partners. This is a list of references that were used to create this lesson. Visiting these websites will provide you with more information on how to use the mathematical practices in your daily math lessons. In this lesson, you learned how to teach mathematical practice number 3, construct viable arguments, and critique the reasoning of others by modeling and supporting student discourse.